sexy people. It is Dave, it is Duncan, back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. For this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from Philadelphia experimental metal group Kaonashi. The band's new album, I Want to Go Home, will be released on June 6th via Rude Records and Equal Vision Records. Started by vocalist Peter Rono and guitarist vocalist Alex Hallquist in 2012, things really solidified for Kaonashi in 2016 when drummer Pao, we'll go with Pao, joined the band and they started touring all over the country, eventually gaining the interest of Equal Vision Records, who released the band's sophomore full-length Dear Lemonhouse, You Ruined Me senior year in 2021. Conceptually, this album answers any questions anyone has ever had about the story, says Rono, adding that the band's 2024 EP collection, The Three Faces of Beauty, a violent misinterpretation of Morgan Montgomery, A Second Chance at Forever, The Brilliant Lies from Casey Diamond, helps further expand on this compelling narrative. It was written to be heavy, chaotic, and overwhelming, he summarises. Ignore the siren in the background.
That's the, you know what that is? That is the Dave's pronouncing things wrong and struggling over the many words that are used by this band in the titles of albums and the names of their band members.
Yeah. Either that or it's a zombie apocalypse, I'm not entirely sure.
It's probably for context. An added danger, Dave lives close to the largest petrochemical factory in the UK. And if it goes up, not only will Dave disappear, but me, many miles away from Dave, will also disappear.
Yeah, I won't need to use the flame effects in this video at all. But it hasn't been easy for Kaonashi to be a band that exists on the outskirts of so many genres. And at times, they weren't even sure if their message would find an audience. I've been saying this a lot on this tour to summarise the band, but people hate what they don't understand. And I think that's been extremely polarising. It hasn't been this simple, easy trajectory. It's been love and hate. It's been one or the other, and I wouldn't have it any other way. The people who do understand it genuinely support us, and the people who don't actively dislike us, he adds with a laugh. I embrace it and I love it, and I'm glad it's been that way. It's been equally easier and harder. On the album, he said, I don't just go in and write a song. I go into it with aim and intention and try to emulate these things that I love. It just so happens that a lot of the things I love are polarising artists that are creative and expressive for no other reason than just to make music that they like. The album was recorded by the band themselves, with co-production on the drums by Daniel Bergstrand and mixing by Matt Hyde, who has worked with acts like Slayer and Children of Bodom. So, so these guys have been on our radar for a little while. We've done some reactions in the past. Never had the chance to go in deep on one of the releases until now.
Yeah, I don't know, why did we not do that previous album?
2021. I'm not entirely sure.
That's when they came properly on our radar.
Yeah.
And I remember reacting to their stuff around then. And I remember being like that, we need to check these guys out. And then the album came out, and I was like, guess we didn't check these guys out.
Yeah, I don't know what happened with the album. The EP, or they released a couple of EPs last year. One of those did get reviewed on the website by one of the other guys. But there were two quite different EPs. One was like heavy on the kind of the tech and the mathcore, and then the other one was slightly more alternative and kind of post-hardcore driven. It's also worth mentioning that Kaonashi don't do things by halves, and most of the releases, if not all, have been kind of interconnected with a storyline featuring like multiple characters, which this album also features. So technically a concept album.
Yes.
13 tracks, about 45 minutes for this one.
Yes.
So just briefly touching on that previous album, Dear Lemonhouse. We got to it a little bit later, didn't review it, but I enjoyed a lot of what was on offer on that release. As I said, like this band don't do by the numbers, don't do like beige albums. Everything they do comes with some sort of risk, and I think like sometimes it really pays off in like a huge way. And then there's been other times I feel like maybe it hasn't quite landed the way they maybe intended. I feel like that album had a kind of mixture of both, like musically and vocally, like incredible, very dynamic. But it was one of those albums that took me like a little bit of time to kind of fully like digest it. And even then, I don't know, some of the areas of that album didn't quite like hit the peaks that I was kind of hoping for. This album now, 4 years later, a little bit more experience, a little bit tweaking and upgrading to the songwriting. I kind of feel like this is what I hoped the last album would deliver. I think the balance they've got on this release is fucking awesome. It takes a lot of the kind of ideology of the previous two EPs, that like heavy technical side, and then the more melodic kind of hook laden side, and brings them together into this one release. And like there's some areas or some songs on this album that are just fucking glorious. As I said, they're a band that give you a lot, and at times that some might find that kind of overwhelming. As I said, the last album took me a good like 4 or 5 listens to get familiar with it. I feel with this one it was much more instant. Like my second listen to this, I was hooked in. Granted, I'd heard a couple of the singles, but even the tracks that I hadn't heard stuck with me much quicker than previous releases. And as I said, I think it's all down to balance. It kind of like, I kind of liken this a little bit to the kind of Callous Daoboys effect. Everything comes back to the Callous Daoboys in these reviews.
At the moment, this year, everything comes back to the Callous Daoboys.
I Don't Want to See You in Heaven, their new album had a kind of similar kind of type balance where it goes like hard and complex in its arrangements and time signatures, but then gives you these moments of clarity and Moorish melody. Musically, it's still, this has a lot of the influences and similarities that you'd expect. The stylings of Sikth are hot and heavy. That kind of eccentric vocal style and the kind of kind of mathy, genty progginess is all over this. Destrage is another band that kind of came to mind when I was listening to this as well. But then there's also parts of this that go like way heavier as well. Like there's tracks in here that go into almost like Meshuggah kind of territory. The opening track, Confusion in a Car Crash, has like touches of that, but with like bits of like the contortionist kind of rhythmically. But then there are tracks here on this album that go much deeper into post-hardcore and alternative, where you get like hints of like Circa Survive or Dance Gavin Dance or Being as an Ocean. So it's an album that covers like a lot of, or covers like a wide spectrum of styles and ideas. But I think this might be their best attempt at kind of pulling all of that together and making it flow and also making it sound conceptual. Although their previous releases have all been linked to a narrative, this one feels like it plays out that way the most. The ordering of the tracks, the arrangements do give off this kind of feeling of like a plot kind of unfolding. And I think that really helps with the flow of this album. I think it definitely has the most cohesion as a Kaonashi album. I think this is the most cohesive they've ever sounded. Vocally though, I think this is where it gets pulled together the most. Like I feel like how do I put this word? So Peter is like a vocalist that I imagine people will either love or hate. I think people will have opposing views on this guy's voice.
It's the knocked loose effect, isn't it?
A little bit, yeah. It's a little bit.
The cadence is in a register that is not generally associated with this music.
No, it's not.
But his inflections on top of that. It's interesting you mentioned Sikth. Sikth did the same thing, and I remember conversations, at this point, like 26, 27 years ago, people having exactly the same thing where like that. Is this guy a metal vocalist? Why is he in the band? Why is he just like spitting gibberish in that voice? Yeah. And it's like you either roll with it or you don't.
Like the two of us obviously being like Sikth fans from
way back in the day,
late 90s. Like this is
yeah.
like a long time ago. So for me, like it wasn't really an issue. I'm kind of used to it. I've heard this kind of style and delivery before, and I actually quite like it. Others may not. You can't please everyone, but his lyrical style, also kind of similar to Sikth, is it has this almost kind of like poetic kind of delivery.
I was going to mention this, like there, and I'm not saying he sounds exactly like this person, but there is a viral rapper called Hobo Johnson,
Right.
who does this. Like he's very as a white guy, looks very like kind of looks like Bill Murray actually a little bit, not the actor, the musician,
Yeah.
just like scruffy looking white dude who does these like it's like stream of consciousness stories, but they're done with like so much emotion behind them that like at times you feel like his voice is about to break, and they all build to like like he has his back and I hadn't noticed that the previous release. It's all over this one. Like those moments where he's building something poetically and vocally around to a bit where it releases, and that either releases through the vocals or releases through the music. It's a really clever device.
Yeah, for sure. It feels like a lot of the time it felt like he was kind of narrating the album almost, which again, like
Sikth.
But it's also another reason this album as a concept really works. On top of that, you've also got like his kind of more manic, kind of heavy vocal as well, which is a bit more aggressive, and it gets quite guttural at times. I'm pretty sure Alex, the guitarist, also adds vocals into this. So there's like many different kind of tones and textures on this, giving you all different levels of intensity and melody. It's brilliant. I thought vocally this was fantastic, and also like heartfelt as well. I think this might be the first time that his vocals actually gave off like a sense of emotion for me, especially in the kind of last portion of the album, the sanguine tracks, which they were very expressive, and made you want to really home in on the vocals when you were listening to the album. Bits of it actually remind me a little bit of Misery Signals. He does a lot of kind of that kind of spoken word kind of stuff, which was kind of heavy on Of Malice and the Magnum Heart. But for me, like vocally, I think this might be like Peter's best performance to date out of the EPs and the debut album. I thought he was fantastic on this release. Musically, a couple of members I need to mention here. The bass player.
Bass production on this is just fucking lush.
MVP of this fucking album, man. Ryan Jones is the guy's name. Made a permanent member of the band in 2024, and like an incredible addition.
It's a smart move.
God, Jesus Christ, his playing is off the charts, man. Gets really funky in places, heavily proggy. Does a lot of kind of almost kind of like Opethy kind of type stuff. You can hear that on the Sanguine too, but he knows just like the moments when to lock in with the guitars and just kind of deliver that extra kind of weight to the riffs and the big grooves. But it's a talented motherfucker. Like as is the drummer Powell. He's got like ridiculous chops. That blast beat on Fairmount Park After Dark, that had me at oh yeah fucker. Like that was just unreal. But the technicality of his playing is crazy. Like if you listen to all those little kind of ghost notes and little accents, the time signature switches, that just like really, really interesting to listen to. But he's very smooth with it as well. Like the way he fills the gaps and transition stuff is really impressive. But to be honest, like musically, it's very impressive across the board from all musicians in the band. There's not like a weak member in this band at all. I feel like in the past, Kaonashi albums haven't really had much like long-term attention from me. Like I'd give them the initial 4 or 5 spins or whatever, but I didn't tend to come back to them all that much. This is probably the first time I've been like really excited to come back to an album of theirs. I felt this was much more rewarding. Like the hooks are bigger, there's more risks they're taking, but the execution is better for me. This hangs together in a much more refined and a much more memorable way, and that's like really exciting to hear. This band they're still getting better on every release, which is Like, it's kind of nuts. But I was thoroughly impressed with this. Really enjoyed it. What about yourself? What did you make of this one?
So you've just lavished a ton of praise on this, and I'm going to say, I think I like this more than you.
Oh,
I think this is goddamn masterpiece front to back. So I liked the previous album. I liked the previous album for the reasons you mentioned. It reminded me of a lot of stuff that hit me during my formative years and was around when I played in bands. A lot of that kind of really bizarre technical proggy / meets metalcore / meets alternative / meets spoken word poetry stuff. Yeah. It was working its way through the late 90s, early 2000s, and those bands, Sikth being the big one of them, because I can't stress this enough. Sikth were around, and then they went away, and then it took about 10 years, and then people finally caught up. So much so that Sikth then reformed triumphantly, and we're still doing it better than everyone, which doesn't make any sense. So anyone that is in that sphere is going to have an interest for me, but I kind of feel the last year I have been the way I'm currently training for my half marathon, which is I've got a training plan. I'm incrementally building up my distance. I'm watching what I'm doing. All the rest. I think this last year of music has kind of prepped me for this new Kaonashi album. Notwithstanding the fact that the name of the band is it's from Spirited Away, which is my favorite anime ever made, and it's after the iconic ghostly character who's basically faceless, and it's a cool name for a fucking band. So fair play, Kaonashi, if that is your real name, because that's what they go under. But so they had me in already on the previous album with all the elements were there, very much like yourself. I found at times there was disparate connections, tracks wouldn't necessarily organically flow into the next one, and it kind of added a little bit of charm to the listen. It was kind of jaggy at times and unpredictable. This is still jaggy and unpredictable, but the flow is on point between tracks. They've really locked down the flow of this album. Very similar to, you mentioned Callous Daoboys. I kind of feel like that was the pre-warm up for this, in a lot of respects. And that is an album which really tests you musically. But it's weird. It's tests you musically, but it's very, at times, conventional and very commercial. Kaonashi is like the younger brother that's trying to fight. It's the middle child fighting for attention in that spectrum. If Sikth are the older brother that can do no wrong, and the Callous Daoboys are the younger brother who's basically the baby of the family, will get all the attention. Kaonashi is the middle. I'm speaking from middle child syndrome here. It's the one that everyone forgets the name of. Is there at parties, but they don't really. But they get on with it. They get on with it and they succeed. They have a podcast where you can review albums, and the others don't. You know what I'm saying, Dave? Liking this back. So, I came into this after listening to. We'd already done. Was it a Red Sync Yellow Teeth? Was that what was on one of our podcasts? I think.
Yep.
And I rinsed that to death once it had come over. And When I Say was the second single, which couldn't have sounded any different. It had elements of Glassjaw in there, which once again, just mentioned Glassjaw all year this year because everyone sounds like Glassjaw. So it had a little bit of that, especially on the chorus. The chorus was really, really, really cool. But two different sounds. So once again, how do they marry up? How does that come together? How does it work on the album? And it works fucking seamlessly. They are heavier on this than I think they've been anywhere else. They are, as cliche as it is, at their most melodic, I think, that they've ever been. But weirdly, not, and this is the Callous Daoboys comparison here, not an iota less dangerous. Just as challenging as they've ever been. I had what I wanted to lock in on was the bass work. Jesus fucking Christ, just put me on a desert island with this bass player. He won't be happy. I'll be happy. Play ya! Hitting him with coconuts. But the bass playing, not only because the production is incredible on this album, but the fact that with all that disjointed guitar work there, the bass is so present, so visible, and like with the drum work, it just locks in everything, and that's when you really get like a great sense of how things are going to run on the album, because that side, when you've got all the kind of technical time switches and all that stuff locked away, and that, you know, they could do, they taking it for a walk and they can do it for days. You can go anywhere musically, and that's kind of what they do here. Vocally, you're right to say there's a bit of Sikth here. There is, at times, I found it was like a weird combination of, there's a Japanese fucking out there band called the Polysix that I absolutely love, and their frontman vocalist has this kind of high-pitched bizarro voice, which is not too dissimilar to this as well. Like I mentioned before, like, it has that kind of almost Hobo Johnson-esque kind of stream of consciousness. I will tell you a story, but it's rap. In the case of this one, I will tell you a story, but it's kind of metal poetry. It works really well, but those different tones of switching between kind of squeaky spoken word, like really high, like almost at the point where it could be perceived as grating vocal lines, the deeper stuff, which was also a play from the Sikth playbook. But those melodies, like, they never, like, this album is awash with hooks.
Yeah.
Like big, huge chorus sections or huge interlude sections. So they never lose sight of that. But weirdly, it never feels like when they're writing a song, they're like, this song needs to have a hook. It just kind of goes there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I worked my way through this. When I got to the end of the first time, I was like, holy fucking shit. They've done it. By Jove, they've done it. And every listen, I love it more and more and more. So much so we're up in the, I think if we're not at the double digits yet, we're spitting distance to the double digits. I think this is fucking incredible. And the more I listen to it, the more I gain a further appreciation for, we mentioned a lot of bands, but how unique Kaonashi actually are in terms of their sound.
Yeah.
Like, we've thrown a lot of different bands here. Dillinger's another one, which I think we mentioned originally when we did our original reaction to them as well. I think that's why they were on our radar, because that was the year where I was like that. Well, Dillinger split up, so that'll be the end of it. And then there was all these bands started appearing, and I was like, oh no, we're in safe hands. Like, all this kind of weird out there mathcore metal shit's taken care of. You mentioned all those bands, but I wouldn't say any of the songs here sound like any of those, but like any of those bands had written that song. Yeah, it would have sounded like those bands were stretching to write one of those songs. So that's kind of their unique element. I think they are almost a band, and, you know, they're a genre unto themselves, even though they take big influences. The production on this is absolutely chef's kiss. Like, the fact the band are behind the recording of this, just once again, what are we doing here? Yeah. But the balance is just fucking perfect. Even down to the glitchy stuff, like, you get, like, it's like glitchy drum production on Elephant in the Room. Like, all those elements that are pieced in, like, I'm assuming the band are all over that, and it just works perfectly. A kind of 4-stroke Baron-esque, and the way they've just, like, kind of taken control of things. I think in some ways that a lot of bands can't do that. They get lost in the detail. Yeah. But for whatever reason, Kaonashi have just, like, nailed it. The very last thing I want to say is you essentially work your way through 9 tracks in the album, and then the last 4 tracks are the Sanguine, 1 through 4. Yeah. And it's kind of, I'm assuming it's to be taken as one long movement. It's fucking incredible. It's really, like, I've seen bands do this before. I think back to Haken, who did that. Was it on The Virus? Did the, you know, it was like the last 3 songs were all like a concept giant movement. Yeah. And I remember saying at the time, this perfect. Absolutely nailed the brief. The movements work really, really well. They'll flow really well on each other. I feel like I'm being taken on a story. I think this is fucking high watermark for the year for me. I've realised that this must be the year that I just want not only music to tear up the rule, but to really fucking challenge me. You mentioned a key point, and it's the last thing, the last thing I'll mention. I think if the vocalist does grate on you, and I can imagine where it would on some, I think go back and keep listening to it. Very much like the first time you drink coffee, or the first time you go for a run, it's not pleasant. And then guess what? After a while, you kind of grow accustomed to it. You kind of get used to it, and then you kind of crave more of it.
Yeah.
That's where I would put Kaonashi. I think the vocal styling is a deliberate choice in there, adds so much to the album, and it just takes you to get accustomed to it to appreciate and understand it a little bit more. So yeah, I think this is fucking phenomenal.
Nice. Okay, last thing, scores for the new Kaonashi album. Yeah, for me, bigger, better, more cohesive, just as big risks, and yeah, more impressive than I've ever heard them before. 4.5 out of 5 for me. What yourself?
5. Yeah. 5. Like I joked about you earlier on. I will be giving it 5s tonight, like Sweeties. Like Sweeties in the playground. Can you have a wee smarty? Yeah, this to me, like I am so, like, because they're still super young as well. We are in for a very exciting journey, and I think the confidence exuded on this is just backed up by the song playing. Yeah, incredible. 5.
Awesome. Kaonashi, I Want to Go Home, June 13th on Rude and Equal Vision Records. Check out the links, have a listen, see what you think. Happy to hear your thoughts and opinions on it. That is a review. Thanks for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon. But until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Please